Hi everyone, it's Ren here again. Hope you're doing well. Today I wanted to talk to you about the questions of INFJs and FI from my perspective, because I've been getting some comments asking about whether INFJs can have strong FI, and can that suggest that they are INFPs. So that seems to be quite a common concern for INFJs. And so I thought that I would address it by giving you my opinion. Now, keep in mind that this is only my opinion, that as how I experience it. But it seems to me that yes, indeed, if you feel like you have strong FI, you might be an INFP, or an ENFP, by the way, because as you might know, ENFPs are not, contrary to what we see sometimes online, they're not necessarily these like hyper extroverted people. An ENFP is probably the least extroverted of extroverts in many ways, because what they extrovert is perception, not feeling, and secondly because they use FI. Now, how to tell? Well, the thing is, an INFJ can have relatively strong FI, I think. But when I say that they can have relatively strong FI, that doesn't mean that their FI is going to be above their FE, and in fact, it's hard to even envisage that it could be above their TI. I think that sometimes INFJs think, and people in general, they think that FI is something that is not necessarily what they think it is, and therefore they identify it in themselves, and therefore assume that they use a lot of FI. So often what you hear, and this used to influence me a lot. I used to think that I was very strong on FI, too strong on FI to be an INFJ, and so I used to think that I was INTJ. Because I never really doubted from the moment that I understood NI, from the moment that it clicked for me. I knew that I was an NI Dom, but I thought for a long time I was an INTJ, because my understanding of FI, I don't know if the word is that it was superficial, but it was too much focused on this question of having a certain form of introspection of feeling, tending towards an authenticity, tending to go against the efforts that could be made with regard to a group of people. So you hear this example all the time. Yeah, so I could have, I could have done that for this group of people, and I didn't do it, so it suggests that I use FI, or whatever. And the thing is, it doesn't really have to do with FI. You could be someone who does a lot of things for your group of friends and be an FI user, and you could be someone who doesn't do as many things for your group of friends and be an FE user. It's not really about how selfless you are. You can be a very selfless FI user, and you could be a very selfish FE user. Again, it depends on the definitions. It really depends on the definitions, but an INFJ, I think, an INFJ is much more likely to, if you like, if they repress FE, they're much more likely to do that for the benefit of TI than FI, essentially. So if your FI is stronger than your FE, I don't think that you're an INFJ. Now, how to understand FI? Well, I've made lots of videos about it, so I would not want to repeat myself too much, but again, my brother is an FI dominant, so I just feel like I have this privileged access into his mind, into the way he is, and I can tell you that there's one sign that I think to me is like a telltale sign, and it's more accurate than relying on these ideas of doing things for a group of friends, or or even authenticity, you know. An FI user is more emotionally self-aware than an FE user. Okay? Like, that's assuming that the functions are well used. An FI user is more emotionally self-aware. But at the same time, and this is linked, at the same time, it's not so easy for them to express it. Why is it not so easy for them to express it? Because they're so emotionally self-aware that they feel as if expressing it almost would make it sound a lot less than it is inside. All right? Whereas in the case of an FE user, the making sense of what's inside is actually not really made sense of unless it is expressed, until it is expressed. And therefore, it's much more natural for an FE user to express a state of feeling, express an emotion. Now, if you're very introverted, you're not necessarily going to express these emotions and states of feelings easily with strangers. But you will definitely have a tendency to be capable of expressing your states of feelings and emotions more easily. But because, in a sense, you will not be blocked by this concern that the FI user would have, that what would come out would be disfigured in a way, by the simplicity inherent in language, as opposed to the complexity of what's going on inside, in your heart, in your mind, if you like, right? And it's a little bit like, think about NE and NI, right? So we know that NE users, especially NE dominants, are kind of easy to spot because they ideate crazily, right? In a good way, you know, they generate a lot of ideas. And we see them. We see those ideas come out. Now, an NI user, an NI dominant, in many ways generates as many ideas. Maybe they're not exactly the same kinds of ideas. Maybe instead of being lots of ideas, they're more like sort of compressing perspectives on a single idea, or, you know, toward a certain single idea. But the ideation is just as rich. But it would be very, very hard for a true NI dominant or an NI user to like express, right? It's hard for us to express the substance of our intuition. It's very hard. It makes sense to us. It's not so easy to express it, right? Whereas it's very easy for any dom or any user to express it. Well, think about exactly that scheme, but with feeling. An FI user is going to have a lot of complexity of feeling and feel very at home in those feelings, but is going to have difficulty expressing it because they don't feel like the outside world is the proper way for them to express these things. That's why often they prefer the written word, by the way. An FE user is going to express how they feel much more easily and have a tendency to, when they identify an other FE user, they will have a tendency to see, like, in a sense, a member of their kin and start FEing, start expressing how they feel. It doesn't mean that they have to like empty absolutely the whole, you know, of their emotional laundry onto people, but they will tend to have, you know, a drive towards expressing these states of feelings. My brother, who's an FI dom, and he's very FI dom, he said to me that to him, and he's like very authentic to his feelings, to him it's almost hurtful to express the depth of his states of feeling. And he finds that he used a word, I can't remember, it wasn't like ostentatious, right, to describe like an FE user's way of expressing feeling. It was an FE dom in this case. It was not a pejorative term like ostentatious, but there is something about that, you know, something like, I think it fascinates FE doms or FE user, FI doms, sorry, or FI users. It fascinates them how easily FE users can express emotion and feeling. So maybe provided that there is a comfortable state, a comfortable context, say in family, for example, in your family, you know, they will express themselves. It's fascinating to an FI dom because it's not so easy for them, even with family, because it doesn't really matter for them. It's not so much a case of their being introverted, and INFJ is introverted. it's a case of their very function of feeling being introverted. So it's very, very, very different than an FE kind of type of feeling. And an INFJ will tend to gravitate more towards the emotional expressiveness. It can be a coy emotional expressiveness, right? But it will still be an emotional expressiveness rather than an emotional introvertedness. No expressiveness. FI dominant, no expressiveness. It's not in the not in an extroverted way, you know, and that's like a very good way to figure out whether you're more one or the other. Remember, it doesn't mean that you are like just piling your emotional states onto people constantly. No, but you have an ease, and in certain circumstances, you know when to use it. And in many ways, that's why INFJs can be such good people, like for listening to others' problems, is that they have no problem comforting others in a way that would be hard for an FI user to do, because they would feel like they cannot as easily comfort other people. They would need to sort of feel it very deeply inside before they do it, whereas for an FE user it comes out, because if they feel like that would be good for the situation to improve, they will do it quite easily. Not so much for an FI user. So think about these categories more so, and that will help you figure out whether you're an INFJ or an INFP or an ENFP, you know. And that's kind of how I see it. And I know for a fact that for myself personally, I identify much more with the FE way of things than with the FI way of things, as I just described them. You know, I can express emotion quite easily when I want to, when I feel like it's right, when I'm not being too shy about it. I can do it. My brother can't do it nearly as easily, you know. But still, if I were to look at examples of like doing things for my group of friends, there are certain, in many ways, I don't do as much outwardly as FI users in my group of friends do. You know, it depends on what I'm comfortable doing for others. Certain things I'm very comfortable doing and I do a lot of it, and other things not so much, you know. So I suggest that you think about it more in terms of how you relate to your F, right, primarily, than in the terms of sometimes what you see on the internet. Okay, let me know what you think. Let me know if that was useful, and let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if I can specify even further, or if you have questions that you want me to tackle in videos in the future, knowing that I'm always hungry for new ideas. I want to sort of keep the pulse of my audience to know what they would be interested to hear me talk about. So don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. I will definitely have a look at it and explore it in some videos in the future. In the meantime, have a great weekend, guys. I might see you this weekend. We'll see what happens. Okay? Ciao.